Welcome to Nirmaya Care, where health meets understanding. This video was originally published on nirmayacare.com. For an uncensored, ad-free version of this video and other health education content, visit nirmayacare.com.
All right, let's talk about something so many of us grew up with, the traditional Indian diet. We're going to dive deep into the staples we know and love, roti, rice, and get real about how they're actually affecting our health. So let's just jump right in with a question that might feel a little edgy. We've all heard it, right? Our food is the healthiest. It's what our ancestors ate for generations. But when you really look at the modern Indian diet, is that actually true? Are our elders always right about this? Well, the source material we're breaking down today gives a pretty sharp answer to that question. And that answer is absolutely not. Yeah, I know. It's a bit of a shocker. It definitely got my attention. So what's the logic behind such a bold claim? To get to the bottom of it, here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle that elders' diet myth. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of carbs versus protein. After that, we'll uncover the hidden health costs, figure out how we ended up here, and finally, talk about how to build a better, more balanced plate. So, let's kick things off with Section 1, the elders' diet myth. We're going to challenge this idea that tradition always equals healthy. Let's see what the data says. Moving on to our second section, carbs, protein, and reality. Because to really understand what's going on with the Indian diet, we first need a clear scientific baseline for what a balanced diet even means in the first place. And here it is, our official baseline, coming straight from the Indian Council of Medical Research, the ICMR. A balanced diet isn't just about not being hungry. It's about getting the right mix of everything. The calories, the protein, vitamins, minerals, all of it, so your body can actually function the way it's supposed to. Think of this as our measuring stick for everything else we're about to discuss. Okay, get ready for our first big number, a whopping 62%. 62% of the total calories in the average Indian diet come from carbohydrates. We're talking white rice, greens, added sugars. That is a massive lean towards just one type of nutrient. And this chart, well, it shows the other side of that imbalance perfectly. While our carb intake is way up here, our protein intake is way down there. The recommendation is roughly 1 gram of protein for every kilogram of your body weight. But the average Indian adult, we're only getting about 0.6 grams. That gap you see on the screen, that's the protein gap we're talking about. And trust me, it has some serious consequences. You see, this imbalance isn't just something in a report. It has real physical effects. Which brings us to Section 3, the body's hidden costs. Let this number just sink in for a minute. The ICMR says 56%, that's more than half, of all lifestyle health problems in India are directly tied to an unhealthy diet. This isn't some minor thing, it's a huge public health issue. This slide breaks down the problem so clearly. On the one hand, all those extra carbs can lead to things like insulin resistance, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. It also leads to that skinny fat phenomenon we'll get to in a sec. And on the other hand, not enough protein means you're losing muscle, making that insulin resistance even worse, feeling tired all the time, and having a weaker immune system. It's like a double whammy on our health. So, have you ever heard of the term skinny fat? Here's what's actually happening in your body. Your body takes the glucose from carbs and stores it as energy, called glycogen, in your muscles and liver. But there's only so much storage space. When those stores are constantly overflowing, thanks to a high-carb diet, that extra glucose needs to go somewhere. So your body converts it into fat. It's a process called lipogenesis. So you might look slim in your clothes, but your actual body fat percentage could be telling a very different and less healthy story. Okay, so you have to be wondering, how did we get to this point? A national diet doesn't just become unbalanced overnight. In Section 4, we're going to trace the history that shaped the plate of food we eat today. This slide tells the story perfectly, almost like a 3-act play. In the past, this high-carb diet made total sense. It was cheap, accessible fuel for our ancestors who were doing back-breaking physical labor in the fields all day. Then came the shift, the Green Revolution in the 60s. The goal was to feed a massive population, so the focus was on crops that grew fast and in huge quantities, namely rice and wheat. And that brings us to today. Most of us aren't farming, we're sitting at desks, and that same high-energy diet that once powered a nation of farmers has become a major problem for a nation of office workers. And there are other big factors too. For a huge portion of the population, religious beliefs limit or forbid eating meat and sometimes eggs, which just happens to cut out some of the easiest sources of high-quality protein. On top of that, government policies for decades pushed farmers to grow just wheat and rice, which meant that more nutritious traditional grains like millets and pulses kind of got pushed to the side. So we've looked at the problem, we've looked at the history, now for the most important part, what we actually do about it. In our final section, we're going to look at some super practical ways to build a balanced plate without having to give up all the foods you grew up with. Let's start by busting a really common myth, the dal dilemma. We all grew up thinking of dal, rajma, and chole as these amazing protein sources. And look, they do have protein. But the thing is, they're what scientists call incomplete proteins. That means they're missing some of the essential building blocks, amino acids that our bodies need. To get all the protein you need just from dal, you'd have to eat a pretty ridiculous amount. So what's the move then? It's all about making smart, easy additions. This slide lays out some fantastic options. Just one egg gets you about 6 to 7 grams of protein. A 100-gram serving of paneer gives you almost 20 grams. For non-vegetarians, chicken breast and fish are absolute powerhouses. Even simple things like adding Greek yogurt or just drinking a glass of milk can make a huge difference in closing that protein gap. And here's a really important point. This whole thing isn't about declaring war on carbs. It's about choosing better ones. And fruits are a perfect example. They're what you call good carbs. They're packed with fiber, they digest slowly, and they help you feel full longer, which is a massive help if you're trying to manage your weight. This brings us to a really common question, one that's surrounded by a ton of confusion. What about supplements, specifically whey protein? Is this stuff just for massive bodybuilders, or is it actually a safe and practical option for a regular person who just wants to get enough protein in their diet?
Okay, let's just bust a couple of myths right now. The biggest myth is that whey protein will wreck your kidneys. The fact is, for a healthy person who's staying hydrated and active, it's perfectly safe. The second myth is that it's all loaded with steroids. And yeah, there are some sketchy brands out there, but the solution is simple. Just buy your protein from a well-known, trusted company. At the end of the day, whey is just a super convenient protein source that comes from milk. That's it.
So here's the bottom line. Our traditional diet, while it's full of history and culture, might not be the best fit for our modern, more sedentary lives. We've seen it's heavy on the carbs and light on the protein, and that has real health consequences. But we've also seen that the fix isn't about some crazy restrictive diet. It's about making smart, simple additions. So that leaves us with one final thought. Your diet tells a story. It tells the story of your health. The only question is, what do you want the next chapter to be?